Okay, so lots of people have been asking me how to get off grid, which is absolutely brilliant, but also a really huge and quite difficult question to answer. So this is going to be the first of a couple of videos, so please put in the comments anything extra that I've missed. Things that I will not cover are my current UK location, because for obvious reasons I am a prepper, so don't ask that one of me, because that one won't get answered. But any other questions that anyone's got, please ask in the comments, and anything I can help with, then always happy to. So going off grid in UK today is difficult, to be quite honest. There's a lot of laws stacked against off-grid lifestyles because they want people to be engaging with the grid, and everyone to be in their boxes with Wi-Fi essentially. So getting off-grid is a little bit of a difficult thing to get into, but there are plenty of different ways. So, okay, so the dream for most people is to have their own piece of land with a woodland and a stream and everything that they need, and they'll build a nice little cabin or have a caravan and some solar panels and live off the grid on a piece of land. So that is achievable, but it's difficult. So one thing, I mean, again, you're going to have to consider is, are you going to go it alone, or are you going to go it as a community with other people? And if you're going to go it as a community with other people, do you start a new community, or do you join one that is already in existence? So if you're wanting to buy a piece of land, then I absolutely know nothing about land prices, other than it is cheaper to buy in the north of England than the south, because that's the north-south divide. Good old Danelaw in action. And Wales has the wonderful One Planet development system, which is a scheme rather, which is kind of, in my mind, more akin to a kind of a God-saving throw in Dungeons and Dragons than something to go and build the idea of a community around necessarily, because it is a great thing that it is in existence, and the One Planet development scheme is absolutely fantastic that is there. But it's still very much going to be in its infancy until it starts getting rolled out and used by more and more people. But it's one of those things that there are a lot of kind of bits of red tape about that. But if you're going to go for land, then Wales with the One Planet development scheme, and yeah, so I'll talk a bit more about that later on. But yeah, so the idea of buying a piece of land, what you will need and what the expectations are often very different. So the planning permission for land, the difficulty is most places that you will look at to buy for off-grid won't have residential planning permission, so you will only be allowed to stay there for 28 nights per year, unless you've got a legitimate reason to be on that land. So if you have got a piece of land that is there for agricultural planning permission on it currently, but you need to stay there because you've got animals on that are owned by a business, and those animals need to be looked after. So, or if you've got any tools that are owned by a limited company or by a sole trader company, that also need security, then that would be a legitimate reason to stay on the land. But if you've got agricultural planning permission, then you are a little bit at the peril of what the neighbours think, because it really does depend on the neighbours basically. If you've bought a piece of land that's got agricultural planning permission on it and you want to stay there permanently, then I've known people do it quite happily for years and years and years, and I've known other people who've gone and they've had like people knocking on the door within a week and wanting to know what they're there for. So it's, again, and like I say, if you've got a legitimate business reason to be on the agricultural planning permission land, then that is a good loophole in that system. If you've got a residential piece of land that has a residential building on it and you want to live outside of the building, or the building is in a state that it is in disrepair and you can't live in it, then you can, if that is residential planning permission, then you can live in a caravan or a temporary building in the curtilage laws while you're doing that building up. And the curtilage laws basically get around the 28-day rule for caravan dwelling. If the caravan isn't being used for cooking and washing, if it is just being used as basically as an extra bedroom to the main house. But then if the main house that is on a piece of land is derelict and not in a fit condition to be lived and cooked in, then you can get around that with that slight loophole of the caravan rules. So those are a couple of ways that you can kind of start to see how you've got to think outside the box when you're looking at setting up off-grid. But if you do have the money and are able to go and get a beautiful piece of land that has got agricultural planning permission and have a lot, like thousands and thousands and tens of thousands in the bank to go and spend on like years of paperwork getting that changed from agricultural to residential, and then there's the problem that if that doesn't go through, what are you going to do then? So it's a long process if you are going to want to buy some land with totally depending on what the planning permission for it is. And as I say, the curtilage laws are good if the land has got residential planning permission and has a building on it, but you don't intend to or want to like live in that full time or at all. If it's going to be quite a long project to do, then you can legally reside, to my knowledge, on the curtilage laws. So those are the two kind of things I'd say for the starting off with getting your own land and setting up planning aspect of it. So that is if you're wanting to go off on your own or start a community from scratch. But there are a lot of communities out there that already are in existence. So there's an organisation called WWOOF UK, and it stands for Willing Workers on Organic Farms, or Worldwide Workers on Organic Farms or something. It's woofing is how I kind of found where I'm based at the moment. And it's a really good resource, to be honest. If you want to learn the off-grid skills, I'll put a link in the description, but go to WWOOF UK. It's a volunteer-based thing where you can basically just go to like off-grid small holdings, and it's all working around organic growing. I learned so much about biodynamic at different places doing woofing a few years ago, and yeah, it's a great resource, and they've got a bit on there that's just full of communities. There's also the Diggers and Dreamers website. One thing I would say is double check before you go and look anywhere. I've not had the best personal experience with housing cooperatives, but land-based communities are completely different. So just ask the questions when you're joining up. Ask questions like, is there a voting structure that's going to, require the sacrifice of autonomy, or, whatever the process for decision making is. Just ask a lot of questions about that if you're considering joining any sort of like housing cooperative or land-based community before you join. But I mean, they can be good places, and I've had a lot of friends, you know, that have had positive experiences with housing co-ops, and I say there are some amazing land-based communities out there as well. So yeah, have a look at Diggers and Dreamers and have a look at WWOOF UK, because those are some great places where you can kind of start to reach out, start to kind of make contacts. So yeah, those are kind of that's kind of the start of it, I guess. So yeah, ask any questions. And I say, this is to the best of my understanding. I don't have any experience of Scotland, unfortunately, but questions on England and Wales, then I am quite, anything that I'm not confident answering, then I will say. But yeah, so hope that that's been helpful. And yeah, peace and love.